Today, we're going to talk about boundaries, dual relationships, and conflicts of interest. I can't tell you how many times I get asked these questions by my supervisees. I've been asked to see a client, but I'm already treating someone in the same class as them at school. Someone's asked me to do an assessment, but I'm a member of the same church as them. I used to see this person in therapy, but now I've been asked by their insurance company to write a report. All of these are examples of dual relationships. Now, should all dual relationships be a straight out no? In this video, I'm going to talk about the difference between a dual relationship and a conflict of interest, why a conflict of interest is always a no, but why sometimes a dual relationship could be a cautious yes. So let's get started. First off, what is a dual relationship? Typically, a dual relationship is where you provide two services for one client. For example, treatment and assessment, or when you provide a service to two clients who are related, for instance, to a boss and to their employee, or to two children from the same family. Now, the problem here is that sometimes these dual relationships present a conflict of interest. Now, all conflicts of interest are dual relationships, but not all dual relationships are a conflict of interest. If you want to keep your life simple, just never do any dual relationships and you'll be fine. But there's a bit more nuance to this, and it's worth exploring in detail because sometimes we don't have the luxury of just saying no to all dual relationships. To understand a conflict of interest, either in business or in life or as a professional, you need to understand what hat you're wearing and what responsibilities that hat carries. Let's start simple. Imagine that you reach out to me and say, Aaron, I'm looking for a supervisor. Will you take me on as a supervisee? Imagine that I say yes. I'm now wearing a hat that says, I'm your supervisor. And while I'm wearing that hat, it is always my responsibility to act in your best interests. You should expect nothing less from a supervisor or in fact any professional that takes you on as a client. Now, imagine that another colleague from your workplace reaches out to me and says, Aaron, I heard you're a really good supervisor. Would you supervise me too? Now, this is a dual relationship. I now have multiple related parties that I'm providing supervision to. But is it a conflict of interest? On the face of it, there's no direct reason that I can think of that I can't provide a service in the best interests of both of you. In fact, your best interests are aligned with each other, as you both just want to get good supervision and become better therapists. Now let's make it a little trickier. Let's imagine that your boss reaches out to me and says, Aaron, I heard you're doing some great work with two of my psychologists. Can you give me some supervision around how I run my department or my business? Now stop and think for a second. On the one hand, your boss and you do have an aligned best interest. You both want to provide good services to the clients of your practice. But is it foreseeable that your interests will ever not be aligned? And in fact, will those interests ever be in conflict with each other? Imagine that what they want to talk to me about is how to fire you. Imagine that what you want to talk to me about is one day leaving their practice and how you plan to keep a secret from them until after they've paid for some expensive training for you. I can't in good faith serve both of your best interests, knowing what I know. In this case, we have what I call a potential conflict of interest. There's no harm yet, and in fact, I could probably engage in that kind of dual relationship dozens of times, and I'll get lucky and nothing's going to go wrong. But when it does go wrong, I'm going to have one or two very aggrieved parties, both of whom are going to have grounds to complain about me. Now, let's go a step further. In this instance, I'm still providing supervision to you, and now your ex-boss approaches me for supervision. You've made a complaint about them, and they are seeking professional advice. This is a clear conflict of interest. There's no potential about it. Under no circumstances should I say yes to this arrangement. So we need to think about dual relationships as existing on a risk hierarchy. At the bottom level is simply multiple related services for one client, or multiple related clients. With no further information, these are mostly pretty safe. In the middle are potential conflicts of interest. This is where I can reasonably foresee that a situation might arise in which the best interests of the multiple clients no longer align. These situations should only be taken on very cautiously and with consultation with colleagues and your reasons. And at the top level of risk are actual conflicts of interest. And barring some extraordinary circumstances, These should always be avoided. Now, where you draw your line on that spectrum is up to you. How much risk do you like in your life? There's a few factors that determines how you're going to answer that, and one of those is availability. If you're the only psychologist within 300 kilometres who offers autism assessments, and you choose to do an autism assessment for a kid in the class of a teacher who is a therapy client of yours, if it all goes wrong, you will find the board much more sympathetic to your decision making than if you made the same decision and you live 5 minutes from the centre of a capital city and there's dozens of psychologists who could have simply done the work. Now we've got the basic principles clear. Let's think about some common examples. Can I do an assessment for a kid that I'm providing therapy for? This is a potential conflict of interest. In a perfect world, the parents want a diagnosis and the kid meets criteria and everyone's happy. Or the parents want you to rule out a learning disorder, and you do, and everyone's happy. Despite the potential, the conflict of interest remains latent rather than actual. Now, let's imagine the parents don't get the answer they want, and they're angry with you. Let's imagine that anger harms the therapy work that you're doing with them or with the child. To me, that risk is both foreseeable and likely, and you'd have to give me a pretty compelling reason why that shouldn't just be a straight up no. Next one. Can I write a report to an insurance company about a client that I'm seeing for therapy? This comes up all the time. Firstly, when you're seeing the client, you have an obligation to act in their best interests. By doing a report for the insurance company, they effectively become your client, which means that you have to act in their best interest too. The best interest of the insurance company is to pay out as little as humanly possible on the policy. The best interest of the client is to be made whole through treatment and compensation. This is an actual conflict of interest and should be avoided at all costs. Now, it's complicated because the insurance company is going to insist on you writing something or they will terminate therapy. And in fairness, they are within their rights to check that their money is being spent wisely. But you need to be very clear, and all you can give is a brief treatment summary. Is treatment working, and should more of it be offered, or should something else be offered instead? Just because you're asked a question in a template from an insurer, it doesn't mean you should answer it. Think carefully about which questions you can answer for a third-party payer, and which questions you should practice the following sentence. I am unable to answer this question as I saw this person in the context of treatment. If you require an answer, please seek independent medico-legal assessment. I hope this has been helpful. Have a great day.